Υπάρχει
Βεβαίως.
το σκάνδαλο με το εβραϊκό νεκροταφείο. Αυτό που λεγόταν για πάρα πολλά χρόνια, οι Γερμανοί κατέστρεψαν το νεκροταφείο στην πόλη. Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστρεψαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη. Αν πάει κάποιος στην Πράγα, ας πούμε, θα το δει, θα το καταλάβει.
Είναι η καταστροφή του εβραϊκού νεκροταφείου που είναι μοναδικό φαινόμενο σε όλη την Ευρώπη. Διότι αν πάτε στη Γερμανία θα δείτε ότι όλα τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία και εκεί που δεν υπάρχει κανένας Εβραίος, τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία είναι άθικτα. Εν τούτης, στη Θεσσαλονίκη έγινε το μοναδικό εκείνο έγκλημα με την ανοχή, αν όχι την προτροπή ηθινόντων της τοπικής κοινωνίας της πλήρους καταστροφής του εβραϊκού νεκροταφείου.
Οι εκδόσεις Μελάνη και ο Ιαννός παρουσιάζουν το βιβλίο «Ιμπουρ, οι Εβραίοι της Κρήτης, 1900-1950» του Ιωσήφ Βεντούρα. Για το βιβλίο θα μιλήσουν οι Βίκτορ Ελιέζερ, Γενικός Γραμματέας του Κεντρικού Ισραηλιτικού Συμβουλίου Ελλάδας.
Η Ετς Χαΐμ, η συναγωγή Ετς Χαΐμ, διασώθηκε ως εκ θαύματος, παρέμεινε όμως για πολλά χρόνια έρμεα στη φθορά του χρόνου. Δεν άντεξε ούτε στους σεισμούς. Στη νέα χώρα, το καταστραμμένο από τους Ναζί εβραϊκό νεκροταφείο,
Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστρεψαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη.
Είναι η καταστροφή του εβραϊκού νεκροταφείου που είναι μοναδικό φαινόμενο σε όλη την Ευρώπη.
Κατά τη διάρκεια του πολέμου το πειράξαν οι Γερμανοί, το νεκροταφείο.
Το καταστρέψαν τις τείχους. Ειδονιζόνταν ένας. Λέγανε «Γιούντο φαφλούχτε καταραμένο βρέα».
Καταστράφηκαν και οι τάφοι.
Πολύ.
Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστρεψαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη.
Είναι η καταστροφή του εβραϊκού νεκροταφείου που είναι μοναδικό φαινόμενο σε όλη την Ευρώπη. Διότι αν πάτε στη Γερμανία θα δείτε ότι όλα τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία και εκεί που δεν υπάρχει κανένας Εβραίος, τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία είναι άθικτα.
Could you describe in more detail the relationship between Jews and non-Jews in your early childhood?
In my early years, they were very good because we had neighbors we were very friendly with. My parents were well liked. They were prominent till Hitler, till I think in the early 30s, 1933, 32. The only incident that I remember as a child is in 1927 or 28, I'm not quite sure, the Jewish cemetery was desecrated and all the stones were thrown over. And I think this was the first time that I was made aware of that there was anti-Semitism.
What did your parents tell you about that incident?
Very little. We were not taught much at all. But you found out and you talked. And then my father went and took the grave of his parents and had cement laid down so that this incident couldn't happen again. And then later on during the war, the Germans did the same thing. They used the stones to pave streets and sell the stones for buildings. So the cement didn't do much.
Αν πάτε στη Γερμανία θα δείτε ότι όλα τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία και εκεί που δεν υπάρχει κανένας Εβραίος, τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία είναι άθικτα.
I remember being absolutely wild with rage after the war when we heard that my father's grave had been vandalized. The Jewish cemetery, well, that the Jewish cemetery, so that means there were enough Jewish people in Hum to have a Jewish cemetery, and vandals had just attacked the Jewish graves. We got that information from the I don't like the term maid. we'd call home help here. And she actually corresponded with my mother after the war. And she used to go and tend to my father's grave. And then she wrote to say, and we'd send her money to do that. And she wrote and said the grave had been desecrated. That's the word, desecrated.
So once you crossed the Saar River, you were in Germany and you were moving forward. What happened next?
Well, other than firing some shots at the Germans, that is by our artillery, I got an inkling of how the Germans were treating the Jews, and that was in the village of Hoof. That's H-O-O-F. There the Germans had desecrated a Jewish cemetery. We saw the tombstones knocked over.
Αν πάτε στη Γερμανία θα δείτε ότι όλα τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία και εκεί που δεν υπάρχει κανένα Εβραίος, τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία είναι άθικτα.
The date is May 28, 1998, the survival. What is in this photograph? Where and when was it taken?
Jewish cemetery in Czestochow. It was taken after the war. The German also.
Okay. What's in this photograph?
Cemetery in Czestochow, destroyed by the German, helped by the Poles.
Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστησαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη. Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστησαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη.
I was in this airfield there in the camp. My father was in the other camp. And it was a good place to hide, you know. There were several other camps like this around the Krakow, where Jewish people thought it was a good place to hide until the war ends, you know. We had to do a little work there, you know, but there were no atrocities there at the airfield. And we were treated fairly decently there, you know. Of course, there was not enough food, but we were able to get more food by being in contact with the Polish civilians working there. And this was going on until July 1943, when the situation in the east, on the Eastern Front, was growing worse, and the Soviets were pushing the Germans out of Russia, and then on the outskirts of Poland, they decided to consolidate all the small camps for security reasons into the large camp, and this is where they took us, all the Jewish people from Plaszow, from the airfield into Plaszow. The ghetto in Krakow did not exist for 3 months already. The ghetto in Krakow was liquidated by March 1943.
I wanted to ask you, were you aware while you were in Krakow, or in Krakow, or in the airfield about Schindler at all?
Very little, very little.
You didn't know about the factory, really?
We heard that there was a Malia factory that was owned by the Jewish person before the war, but now it's owned by a German known Schindler. And that's all we knew, that Schindler was, we only knew in hush-hush that Schindler was a person that the Jews could do business with. He was a German, but in hush-hush we knew that Jews could do business with him.
So in the ghetto, the last liquidation of the ghetto, where were you?
I was at the airfield, in the camp at the airfield, in the Flugplatz.
So you were safe?
Yes, yes. I escaped the atrocity and the liquidation of the ghetto, yes, yes. But in July, the first week in July 1943, they began to bring all those small camps into Plaszow, because Plaszow was a very large camp. It was constructed at the right on the Jewish cemetery. It was a new Jewish cemetery, because the old one was already overcrowded. And it was almost on the outskirts of Krakow. in a hilly area with hills. And the people who were there incarcerated before I arrived there, it was their task to remove all the tombstones the Jews erected over the graves of their departed relatives. And they used those tombstones to pave the road there in the camp. Now, when I arrived there in July, the camp was already functioning.
We were leveling a big mountain, leveling. There were hundreds and hundreds of graves on that mountain. This was the old cemetery where they were not using it anymore. We were breaking up the tombstones. The girls were sitting on the roads in big rows, and we were bringing over big pieces of rocks to them, and they were breaking them up into gravel for the roads.
What type of rocks? What type of rocks?
The tombstones. We were breaking up the tombstones into pieces and bringing over to the girls where they were sitting alongside the road with hammers and making gravel. And so when suddenly they decided to level this ground, to level that mountain. The reason for that, to open each grave. And every grave was opened, the skull, the jawbones with the gold teeth were there. Every grave had gold teeth. They were maybe 50, 60 years old, but they had the gold teeth. So we took off the gold teeth and put it in a bucket, and the skull and the jawbones were rolling down the hill when we were filling the ground.
Who was buried in the graves? Who was buried in the graves?
The people. This was an old cemetery from Krakow. There were rabbis. There were rich people there because, according to the tombstones, there were tombstones, marble tombstones imported from Switzerland before the war. Not everybody could do that. Huge, beautiful monuments, and this was there in that old cemetery. That old cemetery was completely leveled and taking out the teeth. Every evening we had a full bucket full of teeth that one man couldn't even lift it. You had to make two people. This was very heavy. Two people had to lift it and to put it and take it in the office. And so this ground was leveled, and we have finished this job. We have half a cemetery was removed, the gold teeth. And everybody had it. Everybody. Only some of them where you could see a girl because the hair were left in young teeth. The rest of it was older people with gold teeth, with bridges and fillings and everything, all gold. And gold was 22 karat gold, 22, the best gold they used to use, the dentists used to use. And so this was in the beginning. And Plaszow built themselves at that time. And I was working on that, and then I built barracks, and then came in the electric wiring around.
Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστησαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη.
And it was built on a cemetery. When they dig out the ground from a cemetery, the corpses were outside, and they found something shiny over there. I was helping the engineer to measure, He wanted to help me out, but they knew that I am a dentist, and they saw something shiny. They picked it up. They were gold teeth. So they put me over there to look for the gold teeth and give it to the Germans. I didn't like this. I hated it for many reasons. Anyway.
Your job was to go through the corpses?
Yeah.
And look for
the gold. Break the bones, looking for the teeth, gold teeth, and the Gestapo was standing over there with the head. And I have to give it to them. But I didn't like this, so I had some connection. I had some of my patients, the doctors over there in the hospital. So I was transferred to a little factory, a cable factory.
La sorpresa era que nos pararon frente a un cementerio judío, el más grande de Polonia. Miren, y nos dieron diferentes trabajos. El primer trabajo mío en Majdanek, qué sorpresa. Sacar las lápidas del panteón, como sabes. ¿Sabe usted cómo se llama? ¿Cómo siente uno? O sea, a esta edad, como sabes, de repente yo soy, ¿qué soy? ¿Qué hice, como sabes? Sacar las lápidas.
Υπάρχει το σκάνδαλο με το Εβραϊκό Νεκροταφείο. Αυτό που λεγόταν για πάρα πολλά χρόνια, οι Γερμανοί κατέστρεψαν το νεκροταφείο στην πόλη. Οι Γερμανοί δεν κατέστρεψαν κανένα νεκροταφείο στην Ευρώπη. Αν πάει κάποιος στην Πράγα, ας πούμε, θα το δει, θα το καταλάβει.
Και αν πάτε στη Γερμανία, θα δείτε ότι όλα τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία και εκεί που δεν υπάρχει κανένας Εβραίος, τα εβραϊκά νεκροταφεία είναι άθικτα.